So hello, everyone. Welcome to our Exploring Engineering panel. And thank you again so much to the panelists for making the time to come. Before we jump into it, I want to give a brief overview of, especially for those of you who don't know STEMXX Chats too well, on what we're all about. So STEMXX Chats as an organization, we are building an ecosystem of empowerment for women in STEM, breaking down barriers between disciplines and career stages, and propelling positive change makers to solve the big problems of our day. And we are person-centered and impact-driven. We host events with top women in STEM, create online resources, dialogue, and support one another, and work together on leadership teams and projects. And one of our big projects currently is to expose the personal dimension of career paths and career decisions to better understand these factors and key elements, and to help these findings reach more young women so that they can grow in leadership and soft skills that are often neglected in technical training. And throughout the semester, we host a diverse array of incredible speakers and panels like today. And to stay up to date with our latest, you can sign up for our mailing list on our website at stemxxchats.com, or you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at stemxx_chats. So without further ado, I am going to let the panelists introduce themselves and get the panel started. So this is a variety here from different stages and different engineering. So yeah, everyone can take turns introducing themselves.
So, hi everybody, I'm Jenny. I'm a second year at Columbia studying computer science. Nice to meet you all.
Hi everyone, my name's Ellie. I'm a fourth year PhD student studying materials science at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign.
Hi everyone, my name is Anaiko Olier. I'm a second year undergrad at UC Berkeley studying chemical engineering.
Hi everyone, I'm Hannah. I am in my 6th year of a PhD program at Stanford in bioengineering. So hope there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Hi everyone, I'm Emily. I'm a 3rd year undergrad at MIT studying mechanical engineering.
And I'm also Mariana. I'm a junior at MIT studying mechanical engineering. And also something I forgot to mention at the beginning is stick around to the end of this panel because we have a little added bonus. Some of our panelists will be able to stay for some extra kind of face-to-face Q&A and a meet the panelists Zoom webinar that I'll send the link later. So yeah, to kick us off, if everyone could kind of go around saying why they got into engineering and maybe specifically their major, and talk a little bit about the process to get to where you are today.
Sure, I can go first. So I actually did my undergrad in physics because I had a really awesome physics high school teacher, and I liked studying fundamental science. But then I decided to continue and do a PhD, but I wanted something that was a little bit more applicable to kind of like everyday life. So I decided to do material science because it's a mixture of physics and chemistry. And I specifically wanted to focus on clean energy types of applications. The work that I do now is still kind of fundamental polymer research, but I'm looking for jobs and stuff that will give me that more applicability to everyday human life.
I guess I can go next. So I think it's also kind of similar, having like thinking about having a type of like job that would be like very applicable and like have like a type of tangible impact. Obviously there's like technology everywhere type of thing. So being able to know that like you're able to like positively impact people's lives. Besides that too, I guess I always pretty much like video games and computers and stuff like that. So I thought it'd be pretty cool. And like one summer, I don't know, I made this like random video game project. It wasn't good, but I was like, okay, I could maybe see myself trying to like do this, you know? And that's kind of like how I got into like thinking about doing like computer science.
For me in high school, I was in IB, so we had to take 3 years of a specific science. And I decided to take chemistry, and I really liked it. Just like the science in general, I was fascinated about it. But I was also in robotics in high school, so I really liked the design aspect and like the problem solving when it came to robotics and collaborative working. So then when I learned about chemical engineering, it's doing chemistry that I love, but also problem solving and how everyone's saying, like more applicable, not just working in labs, but creating these large scale processes that can impact everyday life. So then I was like, yeah, that's the major for me. And I decided to study it. And so far I'm liking it. So yeah.
I can go. When I was in middle school and high school, I actually thought that I wanted to do like biology and pre-med, and because I really didn't know what else there was to do in STEM. I just didn't understand what engineering was. And I talked to my cousin who's a civil engineer, and he told me about how engineers, specifically like mechanical and civil engineers, get to like design things and create everything that we use around us every day. And I just thought that was so cool. So I decided to go with mechanical engineering because I like creative things. I like designing things and learning how everything around me works.
Yeah, I kind of agree with all, like a lot of, or relate to a lot of the stories the other panelists have talked about. I think for me, I never really felt like there was this one thing I really wanted to do. And in high school, kind of relate to Ellie, what you said, you liked physics. I liked biology and chemistry. And so I thought, hey, why don't I major in that in college? I'll do biochemistry, put them together. And so I actually did my undergrad in biochem, and we didn't have an engineering school. And then it wasn't until later kind of figuring out, oh, I like to like sort of tinker with things. Arduinos were just becoming big. And I had a really awesome neuroscience professor who encouraged me to like kind of explore that, and then kind of found my way into bioengineering that way. And now I study neural engineering and biomechanics in bioengineering. So happy to talk about that a little later.
Nice. Thank you all for sharing. And yeah, I definitely relate to the idea of doing things that are applicable and helping design things that are in the world around us that people use on a day-to-day basis to have that impact. So now kind of going more into the school you're at, why did you choose your university? And maybe talk a little bit about the application process, specifically kind of differences between engineering and maybe applying for other majors or other universities, if there's any difference.
Sure, I can go first. So I go to Columbia University, and the way I ended up kind of choosing it was, first of all, since I came from like a more like small city type of thing, and it was a very homogenous community. So I wanted to go to New York because it's like very diverse, but like in general, any big city, there's like a lot of diversity. I wanted to experience that because of like how much like different ideas and like new worldviews and types of things that you can like learn about. And then there's a fly-in program actually for Columbia, specifically for the School of Engineering. So I ended up doing that. And when I went, I found out like I really liked like the culture, like just the school, like the campus is beautiful. And like we were able to like go exploring on our little like midnight excursions to like Times Square, that type of thing. Like having all these like little like trips and just like combined together, I kind of decided, okay, yeah, I want to go to Columbia. So I did actually early decision applying to Columbia. Like I like had my mind set. So for those of you who don't know, early decision is like once you apply, if you get in, you're like bound to go to the university. It's like you're like basically sure that you want to go, and that's why you do that. So yeah, I did that. And then the process that's like I guess between engineering and the college. So the college is where we have like our non-engineering majors. And so the difference is there's not really too much of a difference. It's all done like through the Common App mostly. But I think like the supplementals are probably different. So like you have to write additional essays. So I had to write like, oh, why do I want to do this major? What draws you to like our engineering school specifically? Those type of essays. So I think that was probably the major difference. But overall, the application is pretty similar.
Yeah, I can relate to Jenny for the first part. Well, I go to Berkeley, as you can see, very prideful of my school. And I grew up in the same town as Jenny, and I also wanted to go to another city, very diverse. So I went the other way. I went to California, Berkeley, very diverse. And well, I was also interested in ranking. You know, when you're in high school, you're very interested in, okay, which one's number one, which one's number two. And I mean, when you get to college, it's different. You realize, oh, it wasn't that important. But I knew that they had the top college of chemistry, so I wanted to aim very high. And if I could get in, I wanted to go there. And also, I was fascinated about by the research that they were doing in Berkeley. That year that I graduated, they had just gotten a Nobel Prize in chemistry. So I was fascinated, you know, like I wanted to go there. I wanted to be part of that research. And it's also very beautiful and it's close to the ocean. And I live in the desert, so something different. So yeah, I got in and I just went. And the application is very similar to if you want to do a non-engineering major. You just have to write 2 extra like short answer questions about engineering, but that's it. You don't have to like apply to the school and then apply to the major like in other universities. You just apply directly to your major, and then if you get in, you start with your major right away. So yeah.
I can go next. It's been a few years since I applied to undergrad. Hannah can probably relate, but so I went to the University of Chicago for undergrad, and like I said, I did physics, but there wasn't an engineering program or engineering school when I went to undergrad there, so I didn't have to go through the process of deciding like what type of college or school within University of Chicago to decide. I think what I would recommend for just applying to undergrad in general is to apply to a school that like Jenny and Anais said, you'll feel comfortable there, and you like the environment makes you feel like you want to learn, you can make friends, you can do all of the things that are important in life besides studying too. And second, to choose a university that has a lot of options, because I know a lot of people that change their mind once they get to undergrad. And if you go to a really small private school and try and do like engineering, but you don't really end up wanting to do that, then you might be out of luck. And if you go to a bigger school, like let's say a state school, maybe not your top choice, but they might have a lot more programs for you to do, a lot more things for you to try, a lot more hands-on research activities for you to do. And I think that can be really helpful for when you're an undergrad and you want to try a lot of different experiences before you decide like if you want to do a PhD, if you want to do a job, if you want to even go into the field that you're studying.
Could you add a little bit too about why you chose University of Illinois for material science?
Sure. So University of Illinois has a really good material science program. And so that's why I originally applied. And it's actually the best program that I got into. So that's mostly why I came. It was also like close to my family, so that was kind of convenient. But like I said, being at a really big state school like this gives you a lot of opportunities. Like there's, especially for engineering programs where a lot of the experiments that you do are going to be based on the type of instruments that you have at your university, then it's really important to have like a lot of instruments so you can do lots of experiments. And that's really easy to find at big universities like this.
That was a really great, lots of great points made there, Ellie, and I just want to echo the one about, well, one, feeling comfortable, and then two, just having lots of options, because I think like I had this sort of mistaken mindset of like having to have one sort of like direct path like figured out early on, and probably when I was standing in your shoes applying to colleges in high school, like thinking like, oh, but which one's going to be like the most optimal, that's going to like set me up perfectly for what I want to do and the impact that I want to have on the world. And like as I I think the older I get, the more I just learn every step is really just a prototype, like thinking in engineering terms, like you're just constantly prototyping, and that kind of takes that pressure off of having to have one sort of set path for yourself. And so I think, yeah, it's been like I didn't apply to an engineering school, but like even applying to engineering grad school, just like, again, not getting stuck in the like, well, this engineering grad school has to be the one perfect thing, but like being able to kind of just pick something and go with it. And otherwise you get kind of paralyzed by all of the options that you could have. So just pick something, go with it, make sure you have lots of options open to you. And that's really why I chose where I'm at now at Stanford. Like a lot of, when you're applying to graduate school, a lot of programs make you pick a professor that you want to work with right away. It's a little bit different than undergrad, where you're kind of just getting all the resources of the school. And so Stanford allows you to like rotate and try different, basically they call them rotations, rotate through different labs and try different things. And so the analog with undergrad, as Ellie mentioned, is picking an undergrad that allows you maybe to rotate through different classes or try different things and majors.
I agree with what everyone else said already. I decided to go to MIT partially because I liked how a large population of the school is engineering. So I felt like it'd be really welcoming for engineer and STEM people. And also, it's not like a specific engineering school that you have to apply to. You can apply just to MIT and you can major in whatever you want. You could major in like a non-engineering field and you don't have to do a separate application. So I liked that because I wasn't exactly positive with what I wanted to do. And I also liked how MIT has a lot of opportunities for research for undergrads. You can do research in a graduate school lab with a professor. I also just felt like the community was really welcoming. And I liked the feel of the campus when I visited.
Great. And kind of going back to something you were saying, Emily, earlier, of like when you were in high school and you weren't really sure what you wanted to do or what the different kinds of engineerings were and things like that. I know a lot of our high schoolers are like that, and they keep hearing engineering, but all these different kinds, especially maybe some of the more specific like material science, they might have never heard of. So could we go around and kind of just give an overview? I know some of them are very broad, but an overview to the best of your ability on your major and maybe like a project that you're working on in it, or like give a specific example of what like research might look like in that major.
Okay, I can go. So computer science is probably obviously really well known because, you know, it's a really big major. There's a lot of like projected like job growth type of idea, you know, because everything's like, you know, like everything uses technology now. Everything needs some type of code now, that type of thing. So overall, there's like, because like computer science is so broad, that's partially what drew me to it. It's like very interdisciplinary, right? Like you can combine it with like a lot of things. So because of that, in itself, it's kind of like there's a lot to like mention for CS. So in terms of like CS, there's like the industry side and like the academia side, I guess. And then in terms of industry, there's like obviously a lot of like software engineers, the designing like software that, you know, people can use for products and things like that. There's a lot of that. And within that, there's like, you know, like subsets, like systems engineering type of thing where like, you know, you design more for like the system. And then there's also like, obviously like ML engineers, like AI, those type of things. So there's like those like more specific kinds. There's also like web developing, you know, so like a typical like technologies that you might use there. What other ones are there? There's a lot. Oh, there's also like data science and like financial technology, fintech. So there's a lot of really different fields that ends up going into basically. On the research side, I guess there's also like the AI, ML type of stuff. There's research in types of like programming languages, compilers, operating systems. There's so much going on. There's also like computer vision, computer graphics, that type of thing. So there's like a very like a lot of things to choose from. That's kind of like why I kind of also went into CS, because I'm like kind of indecisive about things. So I was like, it's a good way for me to like combine like a lot of like different disciplines, but still kind of like have like, I guess, like one central grounding one. So I thought that was pretty good. Yeah, but there's like definitely a lot that you can do with CS. In terms of a personal project, so right now I'm part of this club called the Columbia Space Initiative. And as part of the computer science mission, we participate in the NASA Suits Challenge. So this is basically like a challenge to design like a user interface in augmented reality for NASA's like next generation spacesuits. So it's like a really cool project. We work with like this like video game engine thing called Unity. It's like really cool. It's actually like when I was talking about how I made a video game like before, it's like what I had like first like kind of dipped into. Didn't expect it to like surface all the way back like in college all of a sudden again. But yeah, it's like really good. As the game system's really good because it's really good integration with like the headset we use, and the headset has like the actual like like AR part. It's called like the HoloLens. Yeah. So the project's just like really cool because it's like not something you would typically do like in your coursework, especially like more like intro coursework. Obviously, you don't really talk about that type of stuff. It also gave you like good interaction with like PhD students and professors. So like this one professor at our school who like his like specialty is in like computer vision. He like pioneered like a lot of it type of thing in graphics. And this like other PhD student who like advises us a lot. So I just think it's a really cool project because of like my interest kind of in like these like type of technologies, and then also like being able to like actually kind of like network with professors and PhD students. So yeah, it's a really cool project.
Okay, I can go next. So chemical engineering is basically the branch of engineering that deals with chemical production and manufacture of products through chemical processes. Basically, what this means is like in the lab, chemists work on figuring out a synthesis or a process for a specific product, or yeah, they do a lot of research, but chemical engineers are responsible for scaling up that process. So if you want to do something in a larger scale, you don't just put a lot of the reactants or a lot of the catalysts. No, you have to design a whole different process and see how it will work. You have to learn, design kinetics about the reaction. You have to learn the chemistry and a lot of math to be able to make it big and efficient. So that's what chemical engineering is. And it's also very broad. Chemical engineering can be applied to a lot of different things, such as like Jenny was saying about CS. And actually in Berkeley, we get the opportunity to pick a concentration while we're taking like our classes. And the different concentrations that are available to us are like renewable resources and renewable energy. So we work with batteries, we work in seeing how electricity is produced and how we can make it more clean. And it also deals like with petroleum, like how can you make those processes more efficient and evolve to the next step of energy. And there's also biotechnology, which is very popular right now, which is you do a lot of biology too with chemistry. You design products that will be implemented like prosthetics. You also design like equipment for the hospitals and things like that, or with drugs and administering those drugs. And you can also go into like business and management, which is something else, something different. You can go into chemical processes, which is you do more research on the exact design of the reactors, the mixers, or like nuclear engineering, the whole reactors and the processes and how they're going to maintain that reaction within the big reactor is like chemical engineering. And then let me see, chemical processes, energy, environment, and material science and technology, like Ellie is doing. And that's actually the one I'm interested in. So yeah, so that's really, really cool. There's a lot of things you can do. And then within those, like there's specific classes that you can take to learn more about the careers available in those fields and how you can like get involved in research depending on what you like. And right now, I did a research my freshman year in nanotechnology, but currently right now I'm doing ChemiCar, which is a competition where you basically design a robot, but you also design the battery you created. It's a chemical reaction. And then you also design a stop mechanism to like stop the car. And it's really fun because, as I mentioned before, in high school, I was in robotics. So I really like the mechanical aspect of engineering as well. And this just combined like also creating batteries, learning about reactions, and building a car. So it was like, it was perfect. So yeah, that's the research I do right now. And I'm the project manager for my team, so it's very fun, but I also get to learn a lot. So yeah.
This is the fun part, getting to talk about what we study. So like Anai said, material science kind of delves into a little bit of chemistry and a little bit of physics, which is where my undergrad came from, my undergrad side is from. So I guess I'll talk about both. So physics, you can study like astrophysics, like that's more of like observation and like computation things about like planets and like things like that. And then there's like soft matter physics, which is kind of what I do in material science, where you're working with things like polymers and like soft squishy gels. And then there's also a whole side of computational physics and probably a couple other things I'm forgetting. But what I liked about physics was that you can definitely delve into like the fundamentals of like why things work and how they work and what equations govern how bodies are moving and things like that. But material science combines taking those fundamental equations and applying them to materials, which is great because I can then do the chemistry to make the material, and then I can study the material like a polymer and then discover what fundamental equations govern how that polymer moves and things like that. So it's kind of like a combination of physics and chemistry. And you can also go into like biomaterial science and working with like biomaterials and how they, like what kinds of equations describe biomaterials and nanotechnology and everything. So there's a lot of words that you'll hear like nanotechnology or biotech or even AI, I think that you can come at from a lot of different perspectives. And that's what your undergrad degree is going to give you. It's going to give you a certain perspective of like how you look at a certain problem. So if you want to go into nanotech in the future, you can do chemical engineering, you can do chemistry, you can do material science, you can do physics, you can do mechanical engineering. I think you could do any of those and still go into nanotech, but your degree is going to like make you think about nanotech in a different way.
I can go. I feel like I didn't realize how broad all the other branches were because I always describe mechanical engineering as being very broad. But yeah, I also feel like they're very interrelated. Like what Ellie was saying, like nanotechnology can be under a bunch of different kinds of engineering. But I would say mechanical engineering is like the design and like analysis and manufacturing of mechanical systems. So like anything kind of on the macro scale is what mechanical engineers would do. And that could be like anywhere from aerospace engineering or like automotive industry or like mechanics. We do a lot of stuff with materials too, but not probably not as much into the chemistry of it as Ellie would do in material science. Yeah, I would say there's a lot of different ways you could go. I would still describe it as broad because you could do design or like a more nanotechnology area of it, or basically a lot of different applications.
It's funny. Yeah, I think I like always describe bioengineering as like an umbrella term that just encompasses like so many things, like from micro, like cellular level things, or even subcellular, like protein level things, to I don't know, yeah, macro, like human scale type, or like whole ecosystem organism type, community things. Like there's bioengineering kind of affects all of those different levels. Again, echoing sort of a point that Ellie made about having like a perspective out of your undergrad, I think bioengineering is a relatively new field, and I would argue, I think it's great to study as a graduate student, like sort of in the second phase of my education, but I think it would have, it is so young that it might have, a lot of the programs are fairly new for undergrad programs. So I would almost encourage, if you do want to major in bioengineering as an undergrad, to like really try to hone hone a skill set in something that's a little bit more established, like mechanical engineering or computer science, in addition to like whatever your bioengineering studies are, because bioengineering will give you a lot of breadth, but you kind of want to find some depth in your undergrad. And I feel like everything everyone has said has covered something in bioengineering already. So there's not, maybe what I'll offer is what I do, which I didn't know was a field at all when I was your age. And that was, it's biomechanics. It's studying, actually kind of taking a lot of principles from mechanical engineering and trying to study how, specifically how people move. And if we can model people with simple systems like springs, which is something maybe you've studied in physics, then we can maybe understand some of the things and mechanisms underlying like human movement. And we can use that to study diseases like Parkinson's, which is what I focus on, which is a motor disorder, where people often tremor or things like that. So I think that's just like a super niche example of how like you can go like take this really broad field and do something really, I think, that fits what you feel like is impactful in the world.
Yeah, there are definitely multiple ways that the different engineers overlap, which is also a good thing because I think someone mentioned it earlier, but what you choose doesn't mean that you have to be stuck in that specific area or the way you envision it to be right when you start off. So you definitely have opportunities with whatever major you choose to explore other areas of engineering. And also with those descriptions, I know a lot of terms were thrown out there that you might not be familiar with, and keep throwing in questions in the chat, in the Q&A. If any of that, because easier if you want someone to go a little deeper into something that they mentioned. But next, I would like to kind of go into some of the more challenging parts of your major. So maybe talk about something that's been difficult or an area you find especially challenging, or just in general, maybe something about your research, your college experience that has been hard, and how you're dealing with it.
Okay, I can go first. So for computer science, because it's a really big field, and also it's a very like technically accessible field because there are like a lot of online resources. It's like there's a big case of like imposter syndrome kind of going on in computer science, I think. There are a lot of people who like have a lot of experience with it. And they've like kind of developed that early on. So you'll have people who like know all these terms. They'll like know all these things, like all these like technical skills that you might not already have. And then you're kind of just like, okay, so like, am I behind? Like, it's kind of scary to think about, I guess, because it's a very competitive field, and like, you know, interviewing is also a technical process where you get asked like to solve questions and stuff like that too. So it's like overall, I think that was like something I struggled with, because though like I was like interested in computer science, I didn't really like, I don't know, like think I needed to take it. Like I kind of thought like, okay, I'll go into college and I'll like learn that, which is also fine. Like I found out it wasn't as bad as I thought it was, basically, I guess. But like when I was first going into it, I was super like worried about kind of like going to college and seeing like, I don't know, like everybody, like I'd show up to my intro class, everybody would be like, I don't know, like this much far ahead of me because like they've had this prior experience or something like that. So I think that was something I definitely struggled with because it's just like, you know, feeling like you're not up to par with like other people's like skills or whatever. But you kind of like gradually learn that like, you know, like not everybody's on the like type of like fast track that like you think they are. And then like if you like, you know, take your like fundamentals like seriously and like you learn them properly, like you're not really like as far behind as you think. Yeah. So that's what I've kind of like struggled with, and then like realized it's still something like sometimes you like struggle with, especially when you like looked on LinkedIn and there's all these people like that they're like super like big companies and things like that. And maybe they're like, I don't know, like years younger than you. And so it is like daunting, but like it's something like you constantly like reevaluate, and like as you like develop your own skills and things like that, you start to kind of like learn more about like, I don't know, focusing on your like, I guess, growth. So yeah, it's not like too much of like an engineering problem, but more like a, you know, social problem.
I agree with Jenny. I also felt like that going into my undergrad. I felt like imposter syndrome. But other than that, also like going into chemical engineering, you think, oh, it's chemistry, right? And I'm like, you know, I've taken 3 years of chemistry, right? I'm good. But then I got there and I was like, oh my goodness, I know nothing about chemistry. And then they're like, here are your physics classes, your biology classes, your material science classes. And I was like, wait, I just thought it was chemistry. So like that's also something like a reality shock that I had to take physics. And I'm not like Ellie, I'm not naturally gifted in physics. You know, I struggled in physics. But it was very fun. But like it took me some time to like get adjusted to like all the other sciences I also had to take. And we go very in depth in all the other sciences because you don't declare like your concentration into like your last 2 years. So they want you to have a very good foundation in all three sciences. So you have to take like 3 or 4 classes in biology and physics, and then like a bunch in chemistry. So that was something different that I had to get adjusted to. Um, but it's a very good community. I had study groups, and even with the whole pandemic, we continued doing study groups, and yeah, just working together to get it done and get through the classes, because you might think you're struggling, but in reality, everyone's struggling. Like I would think, oh, I got such a bad grade, and then I would see the average, and I was like, I guess I didn't do so bad. But yeah, like working with other people, asking for help, and like that just helps you get through the classes, and it has helped me so far. So yeah.
I would agree. There's definitely both like the actual difficulty of the major that you are choosing and doing the work for, but also the like social and like individual difficulty, like Jenny and Anna, you were saying about not thinking you can do it well, and like learning to ask for help and learning to work with others. I, for my undergrad at University of Chicago, it's a liberal arts school, so the number of people doing physics was like very small, and the number of nice people was like even smaller. So it was difficult to like do the math, which was hard by on its own, and then to like work with people that were like not very fun to work with, or so it's takes a lot to learn how to go to the TA, to go to the professor, to like ask for help if you don't understand something, because like they were saying, it's really good to know the fundamentals before you try and learn the harder material. I would say, there was something else I was going to say. Challenges with grad school, I think, are kind of universal in that there's always going to be something wrong with your project. And that can get really frustrating just on a personal level as well, and really, really make you doubt if it's the thing you want to do or if you're good at it. But I think choosing difficult majors and to pursue hard subjects is kind of it's kind of like it gets you a better reward at the end, and like trying to do the hard material is going to make you smarter and stronger later. Like you're going to know the material so much better, and after having figured out all the problems that are wrong with my polymers, then maybe I'll know something at the end. Yeah.
I think something that goes along with like what I so relate to what everyone's been saying, and like something that kind of goes along with it that I've noticed I'm not good at but trying to get better at is just like being really open and embracing like failing and like talking about it, right? Like it's sort of a taboo topic, I feel like, but it's so essential to learning and science. Like you can't do science without failing. Like the whole definition of what we like think is fact in science is like it, yeah, like is we had to fail a bunch of times to get to this kind of fact. So I think that, but nobody talks about it, and everyone tells their story as if like it's super linear, right? Like that's because you see that end product, and like that's a much nicer story to hear about, rather than like, oh, I failed like 999 times, and then like all of those times taught me at least like what not to do. And I think you can hear that a bunch, and I feel like I heard it a bunch as growing up and like even in my education, but it never really like sat with me until I started failing massively. And like, I think when you have some like massive failures, like Ellie said, like something's bound to go wrong in your project when you're kind of the one running it. You just learn to like be like, okay, well, I just am gonna expect to fail. My advisor, who's like probably one of the most well-known people in our field, he's like, oh, I just always expect to fail, and when it works, I get excited. Like that's like, oh wow, that was great. But like if you're kind of expecting failure, then you're expecting to be adaptable. And I think that is one of the biggest things I've had to learn and try to really work at. It's just to expect to be adaptable.
Everyone's had such really good points. I agree with everything that everyone said already. I've also like dealt with imposter syndrome because I feel like I've had to like tell myself that my path doesn't have to be the same as everyone else's, and like everyone's gonna have different struggles. So, you know, someone might be really good at this topic, but I might be really good at a different topic, and this is just not my thing. So yeah, I've had to like tell myself that and like realize that it's all going to work out in the end, even like if you're not, you know, the best person at everything. Because there's always going to be someone who's like amazing at robotics because they did robotics in high school, but I didn't do any robotics in high school. So I've had to kind of just like be okay with that and like learn it as I go on my own at my own pace. And also like I think someone else said there's always going to be, you know, topics that you're not as good at. I think this is kind of what I'm already saying, but like in mechanical engineering specifically, there's a bunch of different areas we have to take classes in. And, you know, not everything is going to be my favorite area to take class in, but I get to like challenge myself and have some struggles along the way with problem sets and tests. But yeah, it's a good like broad education.
Yeah, that's so true. A little bit about me with the mechanical engineering. I feel like the stereotype is like you've either like worked on cars, loved Legos as a kid, or did robotics. And I was like, no, in all those areas, but I'm a mechanical engineer. So I relate to that, Emily. So I guess now going into more like future after you finish up wherever you're at, either grad school or undergrad, where do you see yourself going in the future, or just in general, like what are some typical industries that people in your major go into after either undergrad or...
Okay, I can go first again. I think I kind of mentioned that last time. But yeah, so for me personally, I think I'll probably go into industry first and then decide if I want to do like grad school, I guess. Especially because for like computer science is not necessary for some fields because like you don't necessarily need to go like super in depth in terms of thing, but maybe like if I find something I'm like super interested in doing research for or like learning more about, maybe I'll like decide after that, like after I get a feel for industry. In terms of industry, I think I mentioned that before. There's like a lot of different things people go to. I know at Columbia, a lot of people end up going into finance technology, like a lot of like investment firms, banks, that type of thing. So like some of them help with like maybe like trading or yes, any platform. And then in general, there's like a lot of like, you know, software engineering roles where you can do like a lot of different things. Like I mentioned before, it's like developing like software like to be used as a service. You can also do like, you know, web development, like I mentioned before. They're like people who work specifically. I think I didn't mention this that much before. I guess there's also like specifically people who work in like video games. There's specifically people who work in like robotics type of thing too. And also like the people who do like more like embedded systems, like IoT type of things, Internet of Things things. So like where like you kind of like connect like some like hardware with like your software and make like a whole, you know, like smart technology. So like when you have your smart fridge, things like that. I don't think I mentioned that before. So yeah, there's like that embedded system thing. And there's like, you know, like systems and like writing like server code and things like that. Oh, and then there's also a lot of people go into defense actually too. So like stuff with like maybe like drones and like military weapons. So that's like also something people do along with cybersecurity. So, you know, like protecting from like attacks and things like that. So there's a, you know, like good range. I tried to expand more on like what I said last time. So yeah.
Oh goodness. I'm still not very sure what I want to do after I graduate because there's a lot of things that I'm interested in and there's a lot I still have to learn. So, but currently, as I mentioned, I'm interested in material science and technology, and I'm also interested in renewable energy and science policy in specific, which is basically like working in the government and explaining to the people who are not scientists what they want to pass, or like why it would be beneficial to pass a law or why it wouldn't be beneficial to pass a law. And I think that's very interesting, because it's like you get to use your expertise like to help other people. And like, I mean, the government has a very big impact when it comes to policies, or like when it comes to renewable energy. So I think that'd be really cool. And yeah, chemical engineering is very broad. So there's a lot of different fields you can go into. Like there's a biotechnology, you can go into like pharmaceuticals and making them and creating like right now with the COVID vaccine, that how they have to mass produce it, right? Because everyone needs it. Well, there's a lot of chemical engineers working on that, not only like the production of the drug itself, but also the transportation, the administration, and all of that. There's chemical processes, which like in petroleum or anything like energy, that it's that you have to work with that, or energy and environment. Renewable energy has to deal with that, like a lot of petroleum industries in Texas, a lot of chemical engineers. Then there's material science, technology. Like a lot of times when you think of like Google, Intel, or even Apple, you may think a lot of computer science, but a lot of the materials actually on the phone are like the silicon and the chips that they use for the phones and everything like that. They need a lot of chemical engineers for the whole process and to see how it will work and to mass produce them. And then there's also applied physical science. So physical science is more like quantum, or like a smaller scale. And there's a lot of jobs for chemical engineers there. And then there's also business and management. And at first I thought like, what do you mean business and management? But for chemical engineering, we also have to take some classes in business and management, because part of making a process efficient also deals with looking at like the financial balances and seeing what reaction will take less money. How can we recycle some of the products? Is it more convenient to recycle them or to get new products? So a lot of things that you have to consider, and it's applicable in many industries. Other places that chemical engineers work in is also like the food industry, which is very big, whether it's like with the fertilizers and the agriculture, or whether it's producing like products in food companies and things like that. So yeah, it's very broad, and there's a lot of things you can do with a chemical engineering degree.
I think the three things that I think about when I'm finishing my PhD are, I can either go into industry and work for a company like IBM, or like a solar panel company, or like Anna was saying, semiconductors, silicon chips, things like that. That's a lot of material science as well. Or I can work in a national lab, which is run by the government, but does their own fundamental research. Some of that research is like technology, semiconductors stuff. Some of it is clean energy research, like batteries and solar panels. And some of that is defense, like reasons that the government and military would need. Like actually one project that I work on that's kind of defense related is making polymers that can dampen vibrations at a specific frequency, which would be really cool for like airplanes, or like helmets that pilots wear and things like that. That's just one specific example. So besides industry and national labs, there's also academia, which is like becoming a professor. And the pros to that are that you get to decide where you want to study all the time. You get to choose what projects your students are working on, but you also have to write grants and fund yourself. Whereas at a national lab, you get paid by the government. And so your hours are a bit more easy to, a little bit more flexible, and you get benefits from the government, things like that. Those are probably adult things that you don't really care about. One option that I'm not sure has been discussed that much yet is, especially as a physics undergrad, a lot of my friends were considering going into consulting, which is kind of an option for a lot of students to study engineering or physics or math or anything that teaches you how to think, because a lot of companies just want people to like solve their problems for them. So they hire consultants, and that can mean like financial consultants, or it can mean chemistry consultants, like all kinds of things. And that's kind of, they kind of make a lot more money, and they don't really, like, consultants don't have to just focus on science anymore. They can just take the skills that they learned from studying science and apply them to businesses.
I'll also just add, I guess, things I've been thinking about as far, like, I feel like with bioengineering, you could kind of do any of those, the things that we've talked about, more of the cell-based people, which is not what I do. I would say, like, if you're going to go into industry, it usually looks pharma related, like related to drug making, pharmaceuticals, things like that, or academia. Those are sort of the paths I've seen for friends that are in that type of bioengineering. But then I think on my side, having to do a little bit more macro, their industry jobs look like more med tech. So like making devices that go in the body and sort of interface, thinking things like there are pacemakers that people with, you know, issues with their heart, there are actually like devices that you can put in people, and they like stimulate the heart in a certain way to like make its beating pattern more regular. I actually work on a device that does that for the brain, for people with Parkinson's disease. So, so what I've been thinking about is sort of something in that space, in like the medical device space, or thinking of something that's a little bit less traditional than sort of the industry academia, is policy making. So informing people that are sort of writing, reforming, and implementing policy that maybe don't have a science or engineering background, kind of helping them to understand what are the important questions and issues, and where should we direct those policies or funds. There's also a lot of like scientists, like Ellie noted, like need to rely on like grants a lot of the time, so to fund their research. So if you work for like the National Institute for Health, you can decide who gets that grant money and things like that. So, or the National Science Foundation is another big agency that decides sort of what projects get funded and what research gets funded. And so that's been, since I think a lot of, I've realized that I really like communicating science, and a lot of our science is funded by like taxpayer money. So that's sort of an area that I've thought about going into, is like figuring out how to allocate those funds appropriately, and also how to get sort of the translation back to the public. So that's been just something I've been thinking about too. That's a little bit less traditional, I think, than what I've seen.
Great. And something came up with Emily, so she had to jump off. So I'll give the mechanical engineering side. There are lots of different areas, like everyone else. So, but some kind of more specific to mechanical would be like manufacturing. So anything like with physical things, manufacturing physical things, mechanical engineers do that. Aerospace, you could go into that. You can go into the automotive industry. You could go into a big one also that I don't think has been mentioned too much is oceans engineering or hydrodynamics, or going into, honestly, the oceans haven't been explored much. So that's something I know specifically at MIT, they're getting very much into. A lot of classes are making projects specifically for oceans or robotics in the ocean, because it's a lot harder to make things for water. And then product design is another fun one. So just any physical household products, mechanical engineers design and build those. And then if you like more maybe architecture, and civil engineering is another branch, but mechanical can also be similar to civil in a lot of ways. So you can help design buildings and things like that, and structures, larger scale. So yeah, those are some. And for me personally, I think I'm in between product design and aerospace, so we'll see where I end up. But yeah, we are getting closer to time. So now I'm going to start looking through the Q&A questions. So one of them, I think this is more for the undergrads, because PhDs are, I feel like, always in lab. But one of the questions was, do you all have to do lab work? So Jenny and Annie, do you want to take those ones?
Okay, sure. So for the School of Engineering at Columbia, you have to do, depending on your major, you have to do certain labs. In some computer science, lab work isn't as emphasized. So I could choose between doing physics lab or chemistry lab. I chose chemistry lab because I'm not good at physics and I like chem. So yeah, that happened. So it's like you have to do it because of like the major requirement, because of like the core for like the School of Engineering, but like it's not a requirement necessarily as like a computer science major.
For my school, you also have to take it for like your major classes. We have to take both chemistry lab and physics lab, only that for chemistry, I think we took 3 labs, and for physics, only 2 labs. So, I mean, not big of a difference, but there's a difference. But outside from that, like there's a lot of also like lab opportunities, like undergraduate research opportunities where you work in labs. And those are not required, but it's definitely advised so you can get more like, so you could see other things that are going around in the university that you don't necessarily cover in your classes. That's how I got into my lab experience, which was with nanotechnology. So that one I just applied to, and it was a professor who had that lab group, and I thought it was very interesting. So I applied to it, and I worked with the grad students, and then like they give us the easier things to do, right? But it was very fun working and learning something new that I didn't learn in my chemistry or physics labs.
Yeah, and for mechanical engineering, well, at MIT specifically, there aren't any required labs because when you take the basic bio, physics, chemistry, they actually don't have a lab component. They're mainly just lectures at the fundamental level. So then it's up to you if you want to dive into it. But there are a lot more shop classes, I guess is what I would call them. So it's not really the same as lab work because it's more hands-on. So I'm in a shop a lot as a mechanical engineer. So let's go on to the next question. So I think we already answered the one about the specifics of each of the disciplines. Another one, so people are saying that you all are very insightful and inspiring, and if you could share some study techniques for the high school.
I'll go. So first of all, don't procrastinate. I procrastinated a lot in high school. And I was there. He saw it. She saw it. We both procrastinated a lot. In college, it really doesn't work as well because you just have like the problem sets. They will take you so long to do sometimes because some of them are just so like hard. It's not a good time. Basically, you don't want to procrastinate. So something I started doing was like I got like you kind of get like a to-do app. I guess I just kind of use Google Calendar and I just like put a to-do list for like every day type of thing. Usually I just do it like once a week. So maybe on like Sundays, I'll like kind of like plan out my week a little bit. And then this is kind of just like up to you depending on like, I guess like your work style. Like if you're better at like kind of like, I guess spacing out or if you're better at just kind of like overall like working like nonstop type of thing for a little bit to like get one thing done. So I kind of like alternate on these type of things. So for my problem sets, what I do try and do is I kind of split them up evenly across the week. So if there's like 5 questions, maybe I'll do like a problem every day type of thing. So that way I don't get too like overwhelmed about like one question, especially because sometimes you get like stuck on one question and it's really frustrating and you really like want to get it right. But then like the more you look at it, the more like the more like you end up like kind of confusing things. And sometimes you'll like come back later, like after you take a break and you realize, oh, I just like misread something completely. And this would have been a lot easier if I'd like read this right the first time. So that's like something I do, I guess, like splitting up my work for like different assignments across different days. So like that way, like for each day I do like a good amount of like assignment for like each class. So I'm not like too overwhelmed by like one class. So that's something I do. When I have time, I do try to read the textbooks, but that doesn't always happen ideally. But I do find that it's like class is like good for like getting like insight into like, I guess like what they're gonna test you on kind of. And then like textbooks give you a lot of like additional information that like, you know, might provide like might provide insight when you're not expecting it type of thing. Like you're like, oh, something like I remember seeing this in the textbook. So I guess that's the major thing. So like splitting up your work or like figuring out the way you work better if you're gonna like do like all of your assignment for this one class in like one day type of thing versus like splitting it up. And then I guess also like just making sure you like budget out your time.
Yeah, that's a lot of really good advice. We're getting close to time, so at times I'm going to go a little over here to just let the panelists all say final words or final advice. And like I said at the beginning, I encourage you all to join, especially if you have specific questions for individual panelists and want to talk to them more. We will have a Meet the Panelists Zoom call separately after this. So yeah, I'll let the panelists say their final words and then we'll wrap up.
Go, Ellie. You can go.
Go on.
Oh, okay. I guess my final word is to just try something new. Like I'm sure we all shared that we didn't know exactly what we were getting ourselves into when we started our major. And you can like change your major, that's fine. But if you think something is interesting, I say just go for it, learn, fail, be happy, and try again. Like none of us are perfect, right? I've also failed a lot, and I'm not even in grad school. Imagine when I get to grad school, but that's what makes it exciting. And just always like be eager to learn and yeah, try new things. So yeah.
Thank you all for coming, and I hope this is like insightful for you, especially because there is a lot you can do in STEM. And I think like in high school it would have been like nice to also hear about like different disciplines that like you don't necessarily always hear about, right? Because you only hear about like, the more popular ones or the more like well-known ones. So I hope this was insightful, and I hope you guys learned a lot. And again, there's like a meet the panelists link after if you guys have more specific questions. So yeah, that's in the chat. Thank you.
I would say you guys are already doing great things by coming to this and learning more about each of the different kinds of engineering. And I would say just explore more and explore what makes you think. Like if you see an article that is about drug delivery and that is really interesting, you're like, oh, actually, that's kind of interesting. Maybe you should explore that and see like ways you could study that. Or if you see something about like how to design spacesuits, like Jenny was saying, like you could study that from so many different areas, like material science or computer science or things like that. But if that's what's makes you think, what gets you interested, I think you should figure out ways that you can study those kinds of things. So just pay attention to what makes you interested.
To echo that, I feel like I heard a lot of advice to explore different things in high school, and like I kind of felt stuck sometimes, not knowing how to explore or not knowing really what interested. Like I knew things that like sounded cool, but like I didn't really know if that really like interested me or was that going to be my passion. And I think those questions are hard, but easier for me is to like talk to people and like just see what brings them alive and like kind of just try to like feel out that energy. And I think in this age of like just being able to connect with so many like people across the world, like that's like you're already doing that right now by listening to this panel, but like just feel free to reach out. Like I can't stay for too long afterwards, but I'll share my email with Mariana, and like yeah, I'm happy to talk and connect you to people. If I can't help you, I'm happy to connect you to people as well. And I think that's the way to go, is just like talk to people, including the people around you right now in your high school. Because
the last one, sorry, I had to step out for fire alarm, but I'm back now. I think final advice, I would just say like kind of what everyone else already said, explore, challenge yourself, be curious about everything around you, and like be open to like being interested in things you didn't think you'd be interested in before. Talk to people like you're talking to us right now, and ask people questions. And also like don't don't stress out about things too much, like figuring out what you want to do in 10 years. Like you have a lot of time, and just kind of go with the flow and let like your path take you where it will take you.
Thank you for that advice. And thank you again all for coming. So this is wrapping up the public portion of this panel. Again, there's a Meet the Panelists immediately after this, so stick around if you have more individual questions. And thank you to our amazing panelists. Thank you for taking the time to do this, sharing your experiences and insights. And I know it'll be really helpful to the people who are here and those who will watch this recording after. So thank you all so much, and have a great rest of your night, everyone.